America's two greatest enemies, the white liberal and the black race hustler. These two individuals seem to work out a system within themselves that keeps everybody else either on edge or in a place of genuine disempowerment. Now, there's a character by the name of Al Sharpton who has been running this grift, and I hate to use a buzzword in such a way, but it is accurate when we're speaking of a guy like Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton has been running a full-blown scam since I believe sometime in the 80s. The man has been at it for a while. He is on the Mount Rushmore of race hustlers. And so I am so thankful that I was finally able to find something that would really reveal exactly who this man was. A man who I believe back in 80s and 90s was one of the least trusted voices in America. People knew that this man was a scammer, he was a liar, and he was using stories in order for him to be able to benefit off the backbones of other people's pain, of other people's fear, and of other people's hatred. And nothing has changed because as recently as 2024, Al Sharpton was up there with Kamala Harris talking about how the reason why the black man had not voted for Kamala is because of sexism and racism. Racism? Okay, maybe you can try to slander us with the sexism, but Yes, it is an internalized racism that has disallowed the black man from see. So, without further ado, let's get into this short form docu-series. I'm gonna make sure to share the link to the actual video below. Shout out to bro who created this, because it's a 30-minute joint, so we're really gonna get into it. And I'm obviously going to be giving my 2 cents. I am literally watching this in real time with you guys. So this is the story of the Tawana Brawley hoax, which is a well-known thing within American history. Unfortunately, it's not in many of our history because they only teach what they want us to know, which is oftentimes a whole bunch of cap, and mocap. So get yourself some water. Sit back, relax, unless you're running chores or doing something like that, then, continue on your way. If you're driving, don't look down, just use your ears. Let's get into it.
New York State is now the capital of racial violence.
We are not going to let this girl be the scapegoat of a corrupt system.
We want to show the world how low down, dongus, and callous the state of New York is.
The media now has released that Tawana identified Chris.
What's the evidence, Dave?
Tawana's voice on the tape identifying Chris.
We have the facts and the evidence that an assistant district attorney and a state trooper did this.
We closed the bridge, the court, and this building, and Main Street.
So after my previous video breaking down the Duke lacrosse case and that epic hoax, I started to get requests about other cases that I should cover here on this channel. And one of these requests came from Nuance Bro. You guys know his channel, I'll link him in the description. And he wanted me to do a breakdown of the legendary Tawana Brawley case. This case that basically put Al Sharpton on the map for all the wrong reasons. And that's what we're going to be going over today, because this was not only an instance where we had that special intersection that I talked about in the Duke lacrosse video of race, class, and gender, but this was also a gold mine for Al Sharpton and the two attorneys involved, Mason and Maddox. However, you guys know how this works. I said gold mine. This video is sponsored by Noble Gold, so we're going to have to throw it to them really quickly, and then we're going to get into the story. 17 more championships after the 1986 World Series, even if 87 didn't work out too well. But slightly more relevant, and I do mean just a smidge slightly more relevant to the climate of New York City at the time, we just came off as a city, and I know this is before I was alive and I wasn't even born in New York City, the Howard Beach incident. And the Howard Beach incident was actually an instance of a black person apparently being killed in Howard Beach by white people, and the motivation appeared to be racial. I will link a Wikipedia article so you can look over this case, but what you need to know is that this rose Al Sharpton and the two lawyers, Maddox and Mason, to prominence.
Mind you, there are always these prominent quote-unquote lawyers attached. If it's not the lawyer themselves who rises up to these ranks, it's like the likeness of Letitia James, I believe is her name. Predominantly new on the scene, race hustling lawyer. Alvin Bragg, who was just presiding over, well, he's over one of the biggest cases ever, which is the lawfare that's been used against DJT, aka Donald Trump, as well as the Daniel Penny case, right? If you guys don't know anything about that, make sure to watch my video on the Daniel Penny case and how the BLM scammers are back at it again, grifting their way into people's pockets to use their money for mansions, vacations, and such and such. Let's get back into it.
And it actually secured a conviction against those who killed this person. So it's not an instance where this was stated to have happened. It did happen, and there were convictions as a result of it. And among another of various amount of instances, real and fake, this gave the climate that New York City was going through a bit of a racial reckoning. In fact, Al Sharpton, who looked like this at the time, labeled New York City worse than the South, the capital of racial violence in the United States of America.
New York State is now the capital of racial violence.
So after wetting their beaks on the Howard Beach incident and gaining a lot of national prominence, Vernon Mason and Alton Maddox were essentially the...
I think those are the years that brother was eating good, you understand? It's not to say that now he's obviously not profiting in the same way. He's still making millions of dollars, but back then he was eating good off of the hoax.
The Ben Crump of their time, and Al Sharpton was just becoming the Al Sharpton that we know. But again, not the skinny Al Sharpton, the one that looks like Majin Buu. This is a story of how, unlike Majin Buu, who got more evil as he got thinner, Al Sharpton was likely more irresponsible, but probably just as evil back in the day.
A teenager named Tawana Brawley offered the portrait of an innocent victim of a hideous and brutal racial attack. Photographed clinging to her teddy bear, her story of violation and shame stirred the deepest compassion and concern in those who heard it.
So with all these people being relatively famous and notable based on the Howard Beach incident, it is no surprise that they took up a case where a black girl on November 28th, 1987, named Tawana Brawley, was found burned with racial epithets written on her, her hair was cut, and apparently she was alleging that she was kidnapped for 4 days and assaulted by multiple people, including one with a police badge.
This is the original Juicy Smollett. The original Juicy story. The original Jesse Smollett story, where he was in the middle of somewhere in Chicago, winter frigid, like 2 a.m. morning, coming from a 7-Eleven or something like that. And two guys in quote-unquote MAGA hats with a noose, put the noose around his neck, I believe, assaulted him, yelling, "This is MAGA country, you effing F word," the other F word, the one with the A and the G and the G and the O and the T. And turns out that the whole thing was a hoax. It was a lie. And yet this year, actually, the entire case was dropped because, you know, because white privilege. Yeah.
Now, I thought a lot about how I was going to tell this story, how I was going to discuss this incident, how I would set it up, and I decided that instead of talking about the accusations first, I'm going to tell you that Tawana Brawley lied. A grand jury investigated her claims, and they found out that she was in fact a liar. On top of that, both lawyers in this case face ethics complaints, one of them getting their license suspended temporarily, and then later on, another lawyer had their license revoked due to the fact that they were mismanaging funds for their clients or something to that effect.
The Brawley report is tough, detailed.
A scammer is a scammer is a scammer. That's why, again, a lot of these quote-unquote activists or the heads of these movements end up with other scams laid on top of the main scam, right? Oh, BLM activist or defund the police activist gets caught with this and this, right? Just recently did a story on a dude who was a quote-unquote defund police activist leader, ended up stealing $75K of the money to use for his own personal uses. So, you know, a scammer is a scammer is a scammer. They're just finding a new grift for them to profit off of.
And blunt on the key question of whether Tawana was raped, the grand jury says no. There was no medical or forensic evidence that a sexual assault was committed on Tawana Brawley.
If a 15-year-old girl had been forcibly raped or sodomized by multiple assailants over a 4-day period, there is a high probability that medical or forensic evidence would have been found.
Also, Tawana Brawley herself, Al Sharpton, and the two lawyers, Mason and Maddox, all lost a defamation suit to the person that they wrongfully accused of these crimes 10 years later. It's nearly impossible to lose a defamation suit in the United States of America because you have to prove 4 quadrants of defamation, but these guys managed to lose it based on the horrific accusations that they were leveling in all different directions. But now we got to go back to the case because we're still talking about November 28th, 1987.
Special segment tonight, the Tawana Brawley case.
She was found wrapped in a plastic bag, by some accounts, sexually assaulted.
The 16-year-old cheerleader said she'd been abducted 4 days earlier and had been repeatedly raped and sodomized.
Tawana Brawley is found in really bad shape. She's partially in a trash bag. She has racial epithets written on her, including the N-word and the KKK. Her hair was cut because we know how white supremacy treats black hair. And she had burns on her clothes and razor cuts in her shoes. Now, the burns were concentrated on her crotch area. The razor cuts in her shoes were obviously in her shoes. She was in terrible shape. We all understand that. We acknowledge that. So obviously this led to her being taken to the hospital, and then this led to an investigation. Now, Tawana Brawley barely spoke at the hospital. She literally said one word, and then she was blinking yes and no to all of her responses. But eventually, through many machinations of not talking to the police, but talking to attorneys and family members, she came out and said that she was abducted for 4 days by 4 white men, or sometimes 3 white men, or sometimes 3 to 6 white men. She was assaulted repeatedly by these white men, and one of them had a police badge.
They were definitely shapeshifters, is what they were. They can change form into 3s and 6s and 4s. That explains the changing number.
So obviously, it was well known that this was going to be a huge case. It became a media firestorm. And of course, the then version of Ben Crump and Al Sharpton were right there front and center to get as much limelight as humanly possible. I mean, come on. White people attacked a 15-year-old girl, a poor 15-year-old girl. It's amazing, and one of them might be a cop. Maybe multiple of them are police officers. Different versions of the story came out multiple different times. Obviously, the race hustlers and the race grifters are going to come out in force in order to back this. Now, they pushed really hard in order to get a special prosecutor in this case. This, in fact, was an effective strategy, to be fair to Mason, Maddox, and Al Sharpton, because this is exactly what happened during the Howard Beach incident. They got a special prosecutor named Hines. He prosecuted the case. He got the convictions on manslaughter, which are serious charges against those responsible. However, this ginned up so much more hysteria that the prosecutor appointed as the special prosecutor in this case was in fact the state attorney general. Now, this is a huge deal. Then Governor Cuomo, and no, I'm not talking about the great and holy Andrew Cuomo, we're talking about Mario Cuomo, personally commented on the case and appointed his attorney general, who had over 900 lawyers on this case. On top of that, the FBI was involved in this case immediately due to the racial epithets, because they were investigating it as a hate crime. So here you have a local story of a girl found in a trash bag, burned hair, burned clothes, torn up shoes, evidence of potential or at least accusations of sexual assault against a police officer and others, and is being investigated by multiple different fronts. The most powerful prosecutor in the state and the FBI are on this case. And there's also the celebrity backing.
Let Miss Brawley represent what we're not going to stand for as parents, as Americans, and as...
Now, of course, it's easy to say this in hindsight. But when you have the Pudding Pops and the Sugar Tops and the Rudy and Theo, when you have that as the voice of reason, yeah. If you know, you know. They're the Baptist. Lord Jesus.
Going to stand for as parents, as Americans, and as human beings.
Because known sexual assault activist, known women's activist, known male feminist Bill Cosby actually offered a $25,000 reward to catch whoever was responsible for hurting this beautiful, innocent, stunning, and brave 15-year-old girl.
So he was paying folks $2,500 for distractions back then. He said, if somebody can find the person who has done the things to the girls, then I will give you $25,000. That's what that man was on back then. He was trying to create a diversions from what was going on in Bill's closet. which was a whole lot of putting pops in the sugar tops. We'll just say that. He was dropping Molly all in that tequila and they didn't even know it. That is crazy. Bill, that is insane.
Now, there was one problem with this case, one thing that made it a little bit difficult to prove out in court, and that was that Tawana Brawley was lying. She was lying about everything, and the forensic evidence is what done her in. So there are multiple different reasons why Tawana Brawley was lying, and this was pretty obvious from the jump. Remember how I talked about how Tawana Brawley had her shoe cut, and she was found wearing that shoe? Well, if you look at where the razor blade went into her shoe, it would have been pretty impossible to not cut her foot, yet her foot was uncut.
The cutting in the sneaker, clearly it was done when the no foot was in the sneaker.
Remember when I talked about burns in her clothes, specifically in the crotch area? Well, her jeans were burned in the crotch area, but she was not burned in that area.
The jeans she had on were burnt in the crotch, but she wasn't burnt there.
Seems rather odd that they would burn her pants and then put them back on her. Also, there was fiber evidence that showed that the racial epithets written on Tawana Brawley's body were written by Tawana Brawley herself. It was written with some like burnt material that had gotten under her fingernails. When you mix it with water, you can write out in black whatever you want to write, like it was ink. The fact that she had this underneath her fingernails likely showed that she wrote this herself. On top of that, Tawana Brawley was not just found in the back of some random apartment complex. She was actually found in the back of her old apartment where she used to live. Seems really random that people would dump this girl in the backyard of the home that she used to live in. Also, the apartment was abandoned and the door was unlocked.
As for the kidnap story, the report...
I mean, I give a great, like, she was the 16-year-old kid who did this. Juicy, you are a whole grown-ass man. I don't know what your excuse was for having such, like, she almost did a better job at pulling a hoax than you did at 16. And you a whole entire grown man. What is your excuse? At 2-3 a.m. in the morning in the middle of Chicago, two country, hillbilly, white MAGA supporters find you in the middle of freezing cold Chicago. They watch your show Empire, so they knew about your character and they knew that you was, you know, dipping your hand in the sugar bowl.
Live in. Also, the apartment was abandoned and the door was unlocked.
As for the kidnap story, the report says no. It says the teenager actually stayed in a place she knew well. Jurors found Tawana Brawley had significant contact with her former apartment at some time during her 4-day disappearance.
Carpet fibers, consistent with those from apartment 19A, were found on the jeans, on the blouse, and the shoe Miss Brawley was wearing when discovered on November 28th.
And when you enter this residence that Tawana Brawley knew really well because this is where she used to live via the unlocked door, what you end up finding is burnt pieces of her clothes and other evidence that she spent a significant amount of time staging the hoax in this apartment. Remember, her hair was cut. There's little bits of her hair in there. Again, the burnt things of her clothes, ashes all over. It seems like the entirety of the crime was staged in this location. On top of that, we later found out that one of the people that were a known associate of Tawana Brawley actually saw her within the 4-day period that she claimed that she was kidnapped by these 4 white.
Now, hopefully sis wasn't at McDonald's like the United Health killer. Some of these folks be the smartest dumb individuals ever. Like, okay, look, I'm not a criminal, so I don't know what type of mentality you got to be in. Maybe I would be just as stupid. But when I think about some of these things, like homegirl is probably, I sure am hungry. You got to, you know what I mean? You got to plan out so many logistics in order for this thing to actually work out for you. Somebody saw her. Hey, girl. Tawana, girl, it's me. What you over there do? What the? Tawana? What are you doing? Oh my girl. Oh my girl. You know what I mean? Like you seen old girl, she over there with the charger. Me? Oh, nothing. That is insane.
Or white people.
What about that gang of white men, the alleged attackers? The grand jury says no. No gang, no men. And jurors point out, Tawana Brawley never provided a detailed account of her allegations or named her alleged assailants to anyone.
So this case had nothing to it from the jump, and the forensic experts, the state attorney general, pretty much knew this early on. They were just working out the details, but because there was such a media firestorm, they were constantly defending against outrageous accusations. Speaking of which, Al Sharpton and the two lawyers implicated the KKK, the mafia, the local police, the state attorney general's office, the governor and his mafia ties, and the FBI, all in a conspiracy to hurt this poor little girl.
Her advisors have said a lot the past few months, charging that white local officials were involved in the crime, not to mention the mafia, the Ku Klux Klan, and the Irish Republican Army.
Now, this vast, insane, racist conspiracy against this 15-year-old girl is one thing. But where it gets a lot more serious, where it gets a lot worse, is the fact that Sharpton and the lawyers actually accused two different people of involvement in the case, and they accused the state attorney general of something probably just as sick, or not really as sick, but pretty sick, because they knew that he was going to uncover this hoax. Now, the two people that were accused...
We have the facts and the evidence that an assistant district attorney and a state trooper did this.
...was an Italian-American local prosecutor named Stephen Pagonis and a police officer named Harry Chris Jr. Now, I'm going to start with Harry Chris Jr. because I think this one...
We have the facts. That's what you got. You ain't got the facts. You got the fact without the C, my friend. Brother, okay, I don't... Look, I know the Ozempic wasn't there when you lost your... But damn, brother. He was... You see how he got progressively bigger as the trial went forward? The man was eating good. Kickbacks. This is how it works. If you want to see how well the grift is going, watch the waistlines of the individuals who are doing the grifting. That's all you got to do. Just watch how they expand as time moves forward. This brother got significantly. He went from Majin Buu to Margin who? Oh, Lord have mercy. That brother got a James Brown perm. That's amazing.
District attorney and a state trooper did this.
Was an Italian-American local prosecutor named Stephen Pagonis and a police officer named Harry Chris Jr. Now, I'm going to start with Harry Chris Jr. because I think this one is incredibly important just to show you how sick and disgusting these individuals are. So unlike Pagonis, who became a national figure, had his life ruined due to the allegations that were basically leveled at him of not only being involved in this crime, again, attorneys or district attorneys have badges, or it could have been the police officer with the badge, but also being tied to the mafia, which Al Sharpton alleged on national television. Let's just hear that right here.
They ran a story where Mr. Pagonis fixed licenses for liquor with the mob.
Was that unlike Pagonis, who did have his life ruined, Harry Chris Jr. was already dead at the time of his accusation. You see, on December 2nd, 1987, just a few days after Tawana Brawley was found, Harry Chris Jr. had taken his own life after a failed romance and other personal mental issues. So the victims of the accusing of Harry Chris Jr., who was accused, in my opinion, out of convenience since he was reported dead 4 days later and they could say he committed suicide out of guilt, actually ruined the lives of the family. And in fact, after the 2004 death of Harry Chris Sr., the father of the person that Al Sharpton and these lawyers were smearing because he was already dead and couldn't defend himself, talked about how he suffered after losing his son and then watching his character be completely obliterated in the media, the harassment they face for allegedly raising a racist who, of course, was proven beyond any shadow of a doubt to have nothing to do at all with the Tawana Brawley case whatsoever.
About Fishkill officer Harry Chris Jr., who died shortly after Tawana was found, the report says no involvement.
And I want to remind you guys that this is a man who is still on the scene today, getting $500,000 quote-unquote donations via the Kamala Harris campaign funneled into his non-for-profit in order for him to continue to perpetuate this very same garbage. The very same man who is creating these accusations. And we talk about accountability. There is no justice. No justice, no peace. This brother has been peaceful for the last 40 years of scamming folks and lying on people's names and spiting people's entire characters and identities. This man accused a dead man whose family is grieving of this heinous act, and they have to live with it, and he's over there at Hometown Buffet getting his grub on. That's what's going on.
The death of Harry Chris Jr. was a suicide completely unrelated to Tawana Brawley.
And because this aspect of what Al Sharpton did, what these lawyers did to this family is often overlooked, I just want you to imagine being a family member that suffers through the loss of your relative only to have him smeared in the national media in Al Sharpton and these Ben Crump past wannabes, whatever you want to call them, attempt to get themselves rich, get themselves notoriety, when they know for a fact, or at least they should know for a fact, that the Tawana Brawley case has nothing to it. Now, if that upsets you, if that gets you emotionally, then watch this clip of Al Sharpton arguing with somebody on some TV show I never heard of, and then this guy getting annoyed and pushing Al Sharpton and the way that he falls back into his chair.
Defending this man. Recently, even after the shenanigans with him and the other
That's a lot of crap.
No,
This man-
brother, you had your chance.
That's a lot of crap.
Brother,
And I got
brother,
it.
no,
And I got it.
hell no.
I got it.
Oh, hell no.
I was not expecting. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I was not expecting. Oh, Jesus. Oh, okay. This is 1% retribution so far. We got 1% justice. Oh, I was not expecting. I was not expecting this. I was not expecting. You had your job. Yo. Oh, we fall down, then we get up. Oh, L, goddamn Sharpton, boy. Oh, boy. You did it to yourself. We all need a good laugh every now and then. Every now and then. Okay, let's...
Now, I don't endorse violence in any way, shape, or form, but if I was Al Sharpton, I probably would have let that guy talk, especially if I roll in that way when I'm pushed over. But the thing that people really don't seem to understand about this case is that there was pretty good evidence that it was a hoax from the jump. There was no evidence at all of sexual assault, much less 4 days worth of a kidnapping and sexual assault on Tawana Brawley's body. Remember, the FBI and the state police and the state attorney general's office were essentially investigating this case from the jump. So if there were any evidence, they would have been able to find it. There was none of that, nothing proving Tawana Brawley was telling the truth. They also had a really uncooperative accuser. She would not talk to the police. She would only release statements to her lawyer or talk to the media or do public appearances without Sharpton.
Because they told her that you gonna fuck this case up if you go in front of people and start talking, because you're a 16-year-old girl who is in cohorts with us to push this scam into the public, to make sure that they believe in this hoax, in this lie. So it's like Kamala, right? We can't put you in front of people. Every time we put you in front of human beings, they like you even more, or they dislike you even more. They like you even less. We can't put you in front of nobody. So we got to manicure these little sets for you. We got to put together interviews. Joe Rogan? Hell no. Joe Rogan. 3 hours sitting there actually having a real life conversation? No, sis. No. We got to make sure that we can edit down the content, period.
Sharpton and hype herself up for the celebrities and fame, and she would gin up this hysteria about her being representative of all black women that are mistreated at the hands of white people.
I have not deceived my family, my advisors, and most of all, my people.
And this really worked in the press, and it really worked with our celebrities. Years after the hoax, or a few years after the hoax, Spike Lee's movie Do the Right Thing came out. And graffitied in the background of one of the scenes of this movie is Tawana told the truth. This was after an investigation revealed that
Spike Lee is a whole entire scam of a human being himself. He has always pushed the racial narrative. He has always had this quote-unquote anti-white rhetoric throughout his entire career, and yet he is in the Hollywood machine. Please make it make sense for me. It's like the LeBron James, you know, social justice warrior LeBron James, who was paid $1 billion by the white man. You got to be kidding me, y'all. These folks are going to leave y'all broke, dusted, and disgusted, and you're going to wonder what happened at the end of your life. I tell you what happened. You believed in this so-called systemic racism that's holding you back, and that's the reason why you can't move forward in your life. That's the reason you can't do nothing with yourself. You believed in somebody who was looking to benefit financially off of your own misery and suffering. That's what you did.
That Tawana Brawley lied about every aspect of the story. Bill Cosby, that advocate for women that we talked about earlier, did not withdraw the reward that he put out for the capture of Tawana Brawley's attackers because he still backed the case even after it was exposed as a hoax. That's how much of an imprint on our pop culture it was. And it goes even further than that. Al Sharpton and Brawley both appeared in a Public Enemy music video together. This is how big this case was nationwide. This was like Jussie Smollett times the Trayvon Martin case added together with a little bit of the Duke Lacrosse on top of it. But despite this national media attention, despite this being the big thing for all the black celebrities, despite this jettisoning Al Sharpton to fame along with these two lawyers after the Howard Beach incident already rose them to kind of like a local prominence, there's really nothing more to say than there was just nothing to the case. Pagonis, who they accuse of being involved with the mafia and involved with this crime, they were able to account for his whereabouts during the entire 4-day period that Tawana Brawley said that she was kidnapped by him.
So there's about 10 minutes left of the docuseries. Shout out to this man. Does an excellent job in all his content. Yeah. This is what we're doing, folks. And these are the very same individuals who are still being propped up by the very same system, pushing the very same narrative. And we wonder why black folk who are still voting 80% Democrat, 93% Democrat. And this is the byproduct of the unwavering devotion to the Democratic plantation. This is what happens, and it will continue to persist and perpetuate in the very same way so long as folks continue to bow to the knee of woe is me.
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking.